Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about 10 NFL stars who we believe are going to be facing some potential cap cuts prior to free agency.
Hike!
So in this episode, it's going to be a rapid fire. We're going to be going through 10 players, and we're going to be telling you what we think as far as the likelihood that we expect these players to hit the market. They're currently under contract, but we see cap casualties all the time during this time of the offseason. So let's start off with the first player, Joe. It's going to be quarterback Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets, who may not be the quarterback for the Jets for that long. We've heard quite a bit about Aaron Rodgers and the idea that he may be on the move here. Joe, he's got a 1-year deal left, and honestly, they can't save anything if they decide to move away from him. What are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? Do you think he's on the move?
100% he's on the move. So I know talked about doing this on a scale. So I'm putting him at a 10 because he is absolutely not going to be the quarterback for the Jets moving forward, and he will be hitting free agency.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think he's a 10 too. And we went on with an easy one right out of the bat here.
I was going to say, put up a softball number 1. It's not too bad to ease in here.
No. I think it'll be a post-June 1st cut, because if they do that, then the Jets will actually save $9.5 million. Now, they would get hit with $35 million dead cap in 2026. So it's a question of, do they want to just bite the bullet now and have a dead cap of $49 million, a whopping $49 million, and they basically lose $25.5 million? That'll be the question. I don't know what they'll end up doing. That, to me, is the biggest question of it. Is it going to be a post-June 1st cut, or are they not going to do a post-June 1st cut?
Yeah, I would think they'd probably do the post June 1st cut. I mean, I don't know who else they'd be also designating to that. So I think he could be, but I could also see the value, though, too, just biting the bullet. And we saw, like the Broncos just, deciding to eat up a ton of the cap space all of, this past season. They have a lesser blow this upcoming season, but, still managed to make the playoffs. Not saying, I don't, it'll be interesting to who Jets can bring in there to say like they could also do that, but could see some value just knowing at least knowing your cap number and eating it all in 1 year versus dispersing it between years.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. The next player we're going to be talking about is much more interesting, and that's going to be wide receiver Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He currently, I believe, has a cap space hit of a whopping $24 million. And as a result, the question is, are they going to cut him? If it's a pre-June 1st cut, they can save $10.5 million with a $13.5 million dead cap hit. If it's a post-June 1st cut, they save $16.5 million, and they'll have some dead cap in 2026. Is Christian Kirk on the move, Joe?
It's interesting. I think there's some potential. I would put this at a 5. I'm not sure if they will do that or not, just because it's not like their wide receiver core is super deep, although I do see the cap savings, so I could see it making sense, but I could also just see them hanging on to him and letting them hit the market in next year.
I'm going to go with a 6. I lean a little bit closer towards the cut side. My reason being is we have a new head coach, we have a new front office, new general manager. So Christian Kirk was part of the old regime, took a step back last year. Brian Thomas is the future there. So as a result, does Christian Kirk a fit for what that team wants to do? I'm not sure if Liam Cohen wants Christian Kirk to be a part of that offense or not. So that's why I lean a little bit towards yes, because at the end of the day, do I really think I could justify that cap hit for Kirk? I don't think so. So let's head over to another player. This might be a little bit in the easier realm here, but that's wide receiver Davante Adams of the New York Jets. Currently, his cap hit is a whopping $38.3 million. He's still got 2 years left on the deal. If they released him prior to June 1st, the team would get $29.9 million in cap savings. If they did a post-June 1st cut, they'd have a $36.625 cap savings. but a dead cap in 2026. Is Davante Adams on the move, Joe?
Yeah, he's another 10. He's absolutely on the move. I mean, he's on the trade block. We'll see if he gets traded. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't get traded, I'm expecting them to release him because he's going to want to be with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to want to be with Davante Adams. And if you're going to get rid of Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams will be a headache for you. So I think they're both of them are on the move for the Jets.
Yeah, this is a tall tale for those who maybe aren't as familiar with following the offseason. When you hear about a player is on the trade block and maybe getting traded, there's a very good chance that they just may have no buyers and they end up being released. Happens all the time. So does a team try to trade for Davante Adams? Maybe. But if they were to, what do you?
You better sign Aaron Rodgers first.
Well, that and like, what are the Jets getting? A 6th-round pick? I don't.
We saw Debo. Not... Debo got it. Commanders traded for Debo for a 5th. So,
right, which isn't that much, honestly.
Especially if depending on how much of the contract the team acquiring him is going to take on. If Debo's going for a 5th, maybe a 6th for Davante. Probably not a lot.
No, yeah, because the cap hit is still going to be pretty large. So there's no way. And he's older, too. It just doesn't make sense. Let's talk about our next player. It's going to be quarterback Geno Smith. This might be a little bit of a shocker, but he's only got 1 year left remaining in Seattle. His cap hit is quite large, $44.5 million. And if they were to release him prior to June 1st, looking at around a $31 million cap savings. If it's after March 16th, it's only a $15 million cap savings. So this move would have to happen pretty quick. If it's a post-June 1st cut, you're looking at $31 million cap savings. The post-June 1st stuff doesn't really much matter at that point because it's only a 1-year deal. So it's not as much of a factor. There's no void years in the deal. It's more so as far as I believe it's bonuses that really come into play if he's still on the team. So this would be quite a shocker. I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle is trying to trade him in the background. We haven't heard a lot about this in the media circus, I would say. What are your thoughts on Geno Smith?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go with the 6 because I think there's potential this could happen. I think it would make sense. Where it gets tricky is if the Seahawks cut Geno Smith, ultimately who's going to be their quarterback? There's not a bunch of names out there on the free agent market. In the draft that these quarterbacks are all saying not that great. Do they trust Sam Howell to step in? I think it'd be more likely that they would trade him than straight up release him.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with like a 3. I think, like you said, I think it's more likely he gets traded. I'd be kind of shocked if he gets cut. But who knows? Could they cut him and then they decide to sign like a guy like Sam Darnold or maybe an Aaron Rodgers? Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem likely, but
I think Sam Darnold would be the play if you could get him. But the problem is there's going to be a lot of other teams that are also trying to get Sam Darnold. So, can you do it?
Yeah, that is the question. So next player we're going to be talking about here could be another shocker, but it's tight end Mark Andrews. Only has a 1-year deal left and $16.9 million as a cap hit, which is quite substantial. If they were to, again, the post-June 1st isn't going to matter because he only got 1 year left. There's no void years in the contract. If he's cut prior to March 16th, you're looking at $11 million cap savings. If they cut him after March 16th, you're looking at a $7 million savings. So, Joe, Mark Andrews had that, it's not really a fumble, but he had his, he couldn't catch the ball. Is he now going to be out of Baltimore?
I don't think so. I'm going to put this at like a 4. I think he'll still be with Baltimore. I think he still means too much to that offense. He got on a hot streak there where he was scoring touchdowns for him in the red zone, getting utilized. I think a lot of the bad parts of the season was due to the injury. I get that he had a bad playoff game, but Like it's cold. Things happen. So I still think he's going to stick with Baltimore.
I think you're ultimately right. I will go with a 4 as well. I wouldn't put it out of the question for them to. I mean, I definitely think in some ways at the beginning of the year we thought he might have been taking a step back. Do they allow for Isaiah Likely to have a more prominent role in the offense? Not sure. I think you're right. More than likely he stays, but I wouldn't be shocked if it were to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either. Especially with a deep tight end class coming in. I just think, I don't. To me, like, there's not that much savings involved to where that would make that much sense for them to just cut him. I think he's too valuable for him.
So now we're switching over to the IDP side on the defensive side of the ball here. We're going to talk about defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. He's rumored on the trade block. Now, he only has a 1-year deal remaining, but his cap hit is upwards of $23 million, or excuse me, around $22 million. Joe, if they were to cut him, it gets $16.3 million in cap savings. Doesn't matter if it's pre or post because it's only 1 year left. What do you think happens with Jonathan Allen?
Yeah, boy, I'll go with a 6, just because I think it could be a little bit more than 50-50, just because they do have him on the trade block, and a lot of times, like we talked about with the Davante Adams, like if you're putting him on the trade block, there's a good chance maybe you just do want to move on from the player, but with his case, it's not like, I don't know. Like, I still think he's not creating any negative buzz or anything. So it would just be strictly cap. But then they also have a ton of cap space. So I think there is a decent amount of chance that he could. But being on his trend on the trade block, that's what pushes me a little bit towards the possibility if he could get cut too.
I think it's a 6 as well. That's a number I was going to go with. I lean towards them not being able to find a trade partner because his contract is just too prohibitive. So as a result, I mean, maybe they get a 5th or 6th round pick. I don't think they're getting a lot for him, Joe. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that's the thing. Like, people might have been surprised with like the 5th for Deebo Samuel. It's just you get to the point where you don't have much leverage because teams know you're trying to do this for cap savings, and they think, well, if you want the cap savings, you're just going to trade him or you're going to cut him. So why would I acquire a guy that you might be able to just get after he's released?
Well, not to mention people don't forget, even with Deebo Samuel, okay, you got him. He's only got 1 year left. You're going to have to resign him to a new contract. He's going to get paid. He's going to be 30 years old. How much more tread does he got on the tires? I don't know. It's a similar thing with Jonathan Allen. If he had a multiple years left on his deal and he was a really good player, okay, maybe. But I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Let's go to our next player. Edge rusher, defensive end Harold Landry, also seeking permission for a trade with the team. Titans are bottom feeders in the NFL right now. He's got 2 years left on his deal, so it's still been interesting. But his cap hit is around $24 million. If the Titans were to release him as a pre-June 1st cut, you're looking at a $10.95 million cap savings. At a post-June 1st, you're looking at 17.5. He's 28 years old. Will be 29 heading into next season. Thoughts on Harold Landry, Joe?
Yeah, I think I'll go 8 out of 10. I think he will.
Wow.
I think there's a good chance he'll end up getting released if they can't try to find a trade partner for him, just because Tennessee's ultimately looking for a reset. They're going to be looking for a new quarterback. Will Levis isn't going to be the answer, and that's going to buy enough time for Callahan coming in his second year. And I think they're just going to want to reset things. And it doesn't make sense to have a guy like Landry when you can save the $17 million and get younger. I mean, this is also a deep edge class coming in the draft. So I think you draft the replacements and get younger ultimately.
Interesting. I think I'm going to go with a 5. I don't have a read on this one. I'm really 50-50. I think the player obviously wants out. If the player in Harold Landry causes a big stink, then I'm thinking like this becomes a situation that just is unrecoverable and they have to move off him. And it could become that. I mean, he tore his ACL a few years back. He's a good player. I wouldn't say he's necessarily elite by any means, but definitely could be a contributor. I think the Titans could maybe get. I mean, they do. He is a 2. You could do get 2 years instead of 1. That could be appealing to teams. Maybe they could get a 4th or maybe even a 3rd out of him. Although I think that 3rd sounds a little rich. But I don't know. The question is, if they don't find a trade partner, will they outright cut him? I don't know. I don't have a read on that. That's why I think it's kind of 50-50 for me right now.
Yeah, I guess if they don't find a trade partner, we'll figure out how badly Landry does want to get out of there. Because if he causes a big stink, like you said, and he forces their hand, they would have no choice but to just cut him.
Absolutely. That to me is the biggest question mark with him is, does he cause a big stink? And then that leads to that. So going to our next player here, cornerback Jaire Alexander of the Green Bay Packers. He's got 2 years remaining on his deal. For a pre-June 1st cut, you're looking at a $6.3 million cap savings. Post-June 1st cut, you're looking at a $17 million savings. Joe, what are your thoughts here on Jaire Alexander?
Yeah, I'll go with a 9 out of 10 for Jaire Alexander.
Wow.
I think there's heavy potential that if they don't find a trade partner, he gets released, because we saw like he was getting benched, for different reasons, causing trouble on the team. I think the Packers are trying to trade him to get value, but if they don't, I think that's why they release him, because they've already been having issues with him. They've got some younger guys, and honestly, Jaire Alexander's just been hurt and hasn't quite been himself over the last few years.
I was going to say more towards a 4, but your comments of him being benched, I forgot about that. I think I'm going to lean towards a 6. I don't know if there will be a lot of trade partners for him. You got to remember, he hasn't always been the best locker room guy. He kind of antagonizes, it seems like, just his personality. I don't know him, but as far as you see his interviews with, the press corps, that goes in there, he's always kind of going back and forth, with the different reporters, going back and forth with receivers, just has that type of mentality. So I don't know. Are the Packers kind of just done with it and they're just ready to move on?
That's kind of where I think they might just be done with him and ready to just move on from him.
Next player we're going to be talking about here is defensive tackle Grady Jarrett of the Atlanta Falcons. He has a $20 million cap hit. He's 32 years old, has 1 year left on his deal, had a really strong season under the Raheem Morris first year. If they were to cut him prior to March 16th, it'd be a $16.25 million cap savings. Whereas if they cut him after that, you're looking at a $15.25 million cap savings. Thoughts on Grady Jarrett, Joe?
Yeah, this is interesting. I'm going to go with 5 out of 10. I think this is 50-50. I don't, like you were saying earlier, I don't necessarily have the greatest read on this, just because I think from a cap perspective, it makes sense. The problem is the Falcons don't really have much along their defensive front, and it's something that's got to greatly improve. But I could also see them from the cap perspective wanting to make this move, especially if they're going to, move on from Kirk Cousins. I know they're saying they're going to keep him as a backup potentially, but it's a really expensive backup quarterback. So they'll have to eat some of that money if they do move on from Kirk Cousins, and maybe the cap savings of Jarrett makes sense at that point.
Yeah, I mean, based on what I'm seeing right here, they're at a negative $5 million in cap space right now. So I'm going to lean towards a 9. I think Grady Jarrett's a great player. I think that they're going to need that cap savings, because I think more than likely, something's going to have to give with Kirk Cousins. So are they going to trade him? Are they going to cut him? Here's a bonus for you. Here's an 11th guy. We're going to have one more IDP. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins, because I feel like we should. What do you think about Kirk Cousins here? He has 3 years left on his deal, $40 million cap hit this season. If they were to cut him, you're looking at negative $25 million in cap savings. There'd be a dead cap hit of $65 million. Post June 1st cut, the cap savings would be 0. So at least at that point, they'd be kind of being like, okay, that's probably how they'd have to do it with a $25 million dead cap hit in 2026. So let's bring Kirk Cousins around. Probably a guy we should have mentioned, but hey, came up in conversation. So what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins here?
Well, I definitely think that the Falcons would prefer to trade Kirk Cousins, and get something for him, and potentially, work out things of how much they want to take on versus, another team take on. They can better negotiate that. But I do think, look, I'd probably go, if they can't trade him, I think I'll go with, a 9 out of 10, because I'm pretty confident at that point they might as well cut him, because I just don't see the point of them having Kirk Cousins as the backup with Penix, and why Kirk Cousins would want to just stay there and be the backup to Michael Penix after getting signed that huge contract, when there are teams out there like the Cleveland Browns who are desperate, for a quarterback. Jets need somebody, Giants. There's these teams that really need them. Can they get them in the draft? Who knows? So I think if they can't find a trade partner, I think it would make the most sense for them to cut them and do the post June 1st.
I'm going to go with a 7. I think it's a post June 1st cut. I think it makes the most sense for them. Then it doesn't hit their bottom line that badly. I think that ultimately they will try to trade him, but I think it's just going to be too difficult based on the contract. So as a result, I think they're just going to want to turn the page. I think they're going to want to do right by Kirk Cousins, not have him I know reports have said out there.
They have to, right? Or else they don't have any trade value. So
they have no leverage, exactly. But I think they turned the page. They wanted to do Michael Penix, and I think that's what it'll end up being. So Kirk Cousins was not our final player, but that must have been an oops on our part that we didn't include him, because he's definitely in the cut conversation, Joe, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I am not, like we were saying, I am not buying the reports of, them keeping him as the backup. That makes zero sense.
No. So our last player here is going to be defensive end Joey Bosa of the LA Chargers. He has, if he cut before, he has 1 year left. His cap hit is $36 billion. If he were to be cut prior to March 12th here, he'd get $25.3 million in cap savings. If it'd be after that, it would be $13 million in cap savings. Joe, I'll just come out and say right now, he's good as gone. He'll be a 10 for me. What are your thoughts?
Really? You think he's as good as gone?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Joey Bosa has been a guy who's been, I think, lackluster. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he's $36.47 million. I think cap savings of $25 million. I think the Chargers would jump at that. I think they'd rather use that money to sign Khalil Mack. You heard, Jim Harbaugh, with his general manager saying, "Come on, sign him." So to me, I mean, Khalil Mack was a much more disruptive player than Joey Bosa was. What number would you give?
I don't know. I was gonna go with like a 7. Because I do see it. I just don't like they want to win and compete, and I think it makes sense from a cap space perspective. I think it's more likely that they maybe try to restructure his deal a little bit to maybe reduce that cap hit a little bit. But I still think that they would want, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and then also having a guy like Tuli Pelotu to mix in there. So I mean, it makes sense from a cap perspective. I'm not as convinced that Bosa is just going to get flat out cut like you're thinking.
Interesting. I mean, they may. I mean, he's been a part of that fabric of that organization for a long time.
And that's part of it. I mean, he's kind of just been one of those guys that is a Charger. So just to flat out cut him, even though it makes sense with the cap, I just don't know if I see it.
Well, that does it for this episode. We talked about 10 players plus one for NFL stars that we think could be facing potential cap cuts right now, this offseason. We might be seeing them being cut here before you know it. Even before this episode gets released, you might see a cut or two because we're doing it prior to it actually maybe happening. But this is important, right? I mean, we're heading into the offseason. If you're playing Dynasty, the reason why we're talking to you about this is because this can really change the dynamics for these players and their overall value. Think about a guy like Mike Williams last year. guy who you and I both talked about were going to be certainly cut. Even a guy like Keenan Allen, we thought would get cut. We saw what happened after they got cut. Their values changed completely. So you got to keep your head on a swivel. The offseason is about to start, and so you're going to start seeing some of these moves. And so I think you'd agree, Joe, it's important to be anticipatory for these upcoming moves, because once they happen, it's too late. If you want to start making moves, go ahead. If you want to wait and see, there's nothing wrong with that, but just know you don't know what's coming around the corner.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you always want to try to, think ahead and be prepared for these situations. So definitely always better to be anticipatory than making those reactionary changes.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.